Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. was on a live show and was asked about the Fred Hampton Leftist podcast. This was his answer.
It's Oakland, California. We just got back from Oakland, California. Now, The Rock, I have a question. The question is, these Fred Hampton leftists online use Fred Hampton to ask for donations. Do you know about? Let me say this. There are so many people unauthorized or bogusly utilizing the name of of the chairman. Our name. You know what I'm saying? We in the process of hiding and dealing with these contradictions. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people, be black when it's beneficial, play Panther when it's profitable, when Cubs when it's comfortable. Know that that's your question. The Rock, know that it's not sanctioned. You know what I'm saying? No, cut straight to the chase. No, we've been hearing about these different groups, and I've been really picking my moves about making sure I don't address each. Because every day, all day, it's constant. A dime a dozen different groups of individuals popping up, and you know what I'm saying. And the deal is, sometimes we let shit sit and see what flies attract. However, you know what I'm saying. The deal is, man.
I just want to be very clear in the analogy here. The Fred Hampton Leftist Podcast Network is an example of shit, but like in a room of shit, and so he is waiting to see if the flies will go to that specific pile of shit. So in this analogy, let's be very clear, the Fred Hampton Leftist Podcast is shit, and right now, it seems that flies are going to that one. So hey.
Shit sitting to see what flies attract. However, you know what I'm saying, the deal is, man, to answer your question, no. You know what I'm saying? And we want the people, and we want to heighten the conscious people very clear to be able to pick out authenticity from counterfeit. And as far as these individuals saying utilizing our chairman's name and donation, no, that's not sanctioned. No, you know what I'm saying? And we're in the process of dealing with it. I say we, I'm not talking about just only the Cubs, I'm talking about the community, I'm talking about the people. Again, the people in general. Right on for the update. Right on. Thank you. Right on. And bring it to our attention. We all see different.
So again, now if it were one thing, it's one thing to say, yeah, my ideology is, I would say I'm closest to like a Fred Hampton kind of leftist. That's one thing. But when you make a podcast and the brand is Fred Hampton Leftist, and you sell merchandise made in slave labor conditions that says Fred Hampton Leftist on it, then you are at that point profiting off of the name of Fred Hampton. Now again, but it goes further. The Fred Hampton Network, mostly Nick, aka Socialist MMA, they love to peddle this conspiracy theory that has been debunked by everybody associated with Fred Hampton, everybody associated with history, that Fred Hampton Sr. worked with white supremacists and racists. That is not true. That's never been true. One of the things that Fred Hampton Sr. did in his organizing was try to de-radicalize people and educate people on the history of racist symbols, such as the Confederate flag. He didn't say, hey, you hate black people, let's work together. He said, oh, that flag you're waving, as a black person, I don't really like that. Here's why, here's the history, here's what that represents. What we should really be focused, and then de-radicalizing them, making them not racist. But Nick, Socialist MMA, uses this conspiracy theory to promote working with Boogaloo Boys, a far-right extremist group, where most of the members are explicitly racist, and they want to, quote, bait black people into a second civil war. That is the Boogaloo Boy mission statement. And Nick has Boogaloo Boys on his show and advertises them under the label of Fred Hampton Left. So, that's weird. That's weird. And so, again, it's one thing to say, yeah, I consider myself more of like a Fred Hampton leftist. Right? That's fine. That's not the problem. The problem is monetizing a name that's not yours and promoting conspiracy theories about that person. That's the problem. That's like if I would say, like, yeah, I'm a Bernie Sanders Democrat. But then when I say that, I sell merchandise. Bernie Sanders Democrat. It's got his face all over it. And then on my podcast, I'm like, yeah, Bernie Sanders actually secretly works with George Soros to fund Antifa. What? So we really need to get this understood. The Fred Hampton Leftist podcast, like, they can be individuals that do individual acts of good activism, and that's great. But you're also allowed to criticize them. And in this instance, it's not looking so good for the Fred Hampton Leftist group. So, again, that's just, wanted to do a segment on that one. Also, real quick, the Fred Hampton Leftist podcast, this is a little interesting, started right after the biopic about Fred Hampton came out. I haven't seen it yet, but it came out, right? And then Fred Hampton was trending on Twitter, and then that's where they started their podcast. So it's not like they were deep disciples or whatever of the, studious history of Fred Hampton. They watched a movie and said, yo, that's epic, and then made it their entire brand. There was this one I covered this one segment on my show at one point, where on the Fred Hampton podcast, when citing a historical event, they played a clip from the movie instead of reading an article on the actual historic event using photography or video from this. They cited Fred Hampton's activism and played a clip from the movie. Hey, I don't know what to tell you. It's a little weird. So I don't know. I wanted to talk about this because I think it's pretty fascinating. But yeah.